When will the thinking mind stop its working is exactly like asking, when will I get enlightened? That's exactly what it amounts to. It is the thinking mind which prevents enlightenment from happening. So when will it end? The only answer can be when God wants to. I know that's not a very big help. Again, I would say that there are people who can help, and they are known as psychotherapists. So if you can afford to go to one of them, do that. The same lady asks another question. Can you please explain that a little more? The other question is, you said that in order to get the understanding, it is necessary to have and get the help and the goodwill of the Guru. I don't have the right words for that, but you know what my question is about. Can you please explain that a little more? Does it mean that it is necessary that the Guru needs to know the disciple personally? Last night you said that you don't personally care about that, which I understood what you meant. In which way is the Guru needed, except that his teaching is needed? The answer is, if the Guru is needed, then my experience has been that the Guru is provided by that power which started the seeking, only at the appropriate time. Let me tell you what happened in Aspen, Colorado, several years ago. The first time I went there were about not too many people, about 25 people. And somehow the first sentence I said was, none of us, you or me, could have been anywhere else this morning than right here in Aspen, Colorado, at this place. And suddenly someone burst out laughing. He couldn't help it. He apologized profusely for disturbing the. Then he said, if I could have 3 minutes in which to explain how I happened to be here, then perhaps I shall be excused for my unruly laughter. So he explained it this way. He said he had not been a seeker at all. He never was a seeker. But the previous day, he was on a flight from New Jersey to, what is the place before? Denver. He was on a flight from New Jersey to Denver. And it's a fairly long flight, about 4 hours, I think, from memory. And he had to join the flight in a bit of a hurry. So he didn't have enough reading material with him. So how long could he twiddle his fingers? He saw, however, the man next to him reading intently. But he could see it was not a novel. He was reading intently. Every 3 or 4 minutes he would stop, put his finger between the pages, think for a moment or two, then read again. But he was reading intently. And this man was surprised. He says, I'm surprised. So when he went to the toilet, he said he picked up the book just to find out what kind of a book it was that had interested his neighbor so much, for so long. And that was the first book of mine called Pointers from Nisargadatta Maharaj. So he started reading it. He started reading the introduction. And he never realized that his neighbor had come and sat down. So when he did realize that his neighbor had come and sat down, he said, I apologized profusely. But to my surprise, my neighbor said, oh, I've read it several times. Continue reading it if you like, as long as you want. And he told him that and sat back and closed his eyes. So he said, I started reading it. I read it for quite a while. I read more than half of it. And then I said to my neighbor, he gave the book. In fact, the neighbor asked him to keep it. So he asked the neighbor, I would like to meet the author. And his neighbor said, do you really want to meet him? He said, yes. Next 3 or 4 days, I've just finished one job and I have 3 or 4 days free. So then his friend told him, well, from Denver, I'm on my way to Aspen. I changed flights at Denver. You are free to join me. I'm sure there'll be no objection. So he said, I got off at Denver, went to the proper place, booked my ticket to Aspen and back, and he said, here I am, and this is my new friend. So if there was ever a story that a seeker who never intended to come to the talk came to the talk, this was it. So, if it is God's will and your destiny to meet a guru, you will meet him at that time. And if it is God's will and your destiny to come to meet a false guru, you will meet a false guru and spend as many years with him as you are supposed to spend according to God's will or the cosmic law. And you will go to the proper guru at the proper time. And you will know it. When you are there, you will know it. It's not as if you put in an advertisement, oh, you can do that and you will have 200 applications. Now, that reminds me of another joke. A millionaire suddenly had the urge to find out what life is all about, because he had plenty of money, and yet he couldn't get rid of the feeling that there was a deep dissatisfaction with life, that life meant something more. And suddenly the seeking had happened. The seeker had been trapped. Then he didn't know whom to approach. Then again someone said, you remember the Swami we met last weekend at somebody's party? He said, yes. And curiously, I have his telephone number also. So he telephoned the Swami. And the Swami says, oh, I remember you. Yes, we met such a time. And he said, this is my difficulty. I am told my problem is attachment to money. And that I have to do something about it. And I was told I have to be a spiritual seeker. So I am in search of a spiritual seeker who will tell, spiritual master who will tell me what to do. He said, my trouble is, I have been told, my attachment to money. So the Swami says, don't do anything at all until I arrive there, and I will be right there. to relieve you of your problem. Yes, that's the. But I really am sorry, I can't help you with your problem. It's curiously enough, I think about a month ago, a famous actor called me. And he calls me about once in 2 or 3 months. So as usual, I said, how are you? So he said, I'm in a terrible way. My wife has just left me. And he was devastated, absolutely devastated. So this happens quite frequently. So the only answer is, time will help. And the more you keep yourself busy, the less time for thinking of the grief. Dear Ramesh, what is the logical basis for your concept that our destinies are fixed at the moments of conception? There is a further question. The answer is that all you have to do is to look at life. Why are there certain abortions? Why do certain conceptions take the natural course of being born? And whatever happens in life, we call chance or coincidence or luck. So, my concept is that at the moment of conception, the destiny of that conception from the pool of consciousness is stamped. That is a concept. Now, why is it logical? For this reason, just from experience. So, if the destinies of some conceptions are not to be born at all, they will be aborted. And even sometimes, every one of us knows a case where the parents have decided to abort the child for whatever reason. And then the pregnant woman has suddenly decided that she can't go through with it. So something which had been decided that she would have an abortion has not taken place. And other cases, abortions have taken place. So obviously an abortion which was decided upon, but no step was taken, obviously it is the destiny of that conception not to be aborted. Then what happens to the conception that is born? There are several cases of what has happened immediately after they are born. That destiny was decided even before there was a birth. An example which comes to my mind is the son of our hostess in Santa Barbara, Janice Chase, is that right? Janice Chase. Her son, eldest son, was a judge, a reputed judge. And he taught at the law school. An extremely nice man, So apart from teaching at the law school, he was available to any student for counseling. So one day, a young lady comes to him and says she is pregnant by so and so, another student, both brilliant students and a very well-known good families. So the moment the judge, when he talked to me, he said, Ramesh, that should have been a cause for a certain grief for the problem for the young people. But he said, suddenly at that moment, there was a flash of excitement. The judge said, there was a flash of excitement. Why? Because he and his wife, married for 10 years, didn't have any child. And they were told that his wife cannot have a child. And then when this woman comes and tells she is pregnant, promptly the judge thinks of himself. Here is a couple known to him, brilliant students, family well-to-do, good family. So he tells the girl, look, I think I may have a solution for you. Come and see me tomorrow. That night he discusses it with his wife. They decide this was a real God sent, literally a God sent. And next day he tells her, and everybody is delighted. So the child is born, the judge adopts it, and I've seen the child, lovely child. So a child who could have been aborted was not aborted. A child who could have been sent to a destitute home for adoption was not sent to the destitute home, but was adopted by a judge in a good family. So when I see examples like that, I don't see why logically I should not have this concept. There's another case, another friend of mine in New Jersey, Ray Napolitano and his wife Marcia. They had a relationship for well over 12 years, I think. They lived together for 12 years. They were our hosts in New Jersey for seminars in Pennsylvania mountains. At the end of the first seminar, I wanted to thank Ray and Marcia for taking such good care of us. My wife and I were there as their guests. So while talking, I said, Ray and his wife Marcia. At that moment I knew I had made a mistake, but I didn't want to correct it. So I went on. I said, we are very grateful to Ray and his wife Marcia for the care they have taken of us. Then the next day, in the evening, 2 or 3 days in the morning, Marcia was radiant. So my wife says, Marcia, what's happened? We are going to get married. And he says, Ray, we were talking last night, and Ray said, Marcia, the other evening, when Ramesh was talking at Pennsylvania mountains, he said, Ray and his wife Marcia. Why don't we get married? Marcia, of course, was delighted. So they got married. There again, she was too old to have a child. I think they tried, they had a couple of abortions. So finally they decided to adopt a child. So they adopted a child from one of the South American countries, Costa Rica or some such place. You remember? Costa Rica, okay. And they sent us a copy of that child, lovely child. So imagine a child whose life could have been something very bad, not, I mean, the worst conditions, but not so good in Costa Rica, has found a place in America to two very good parents, doing well in life. So that is also, I think, something, the destiny of which was stamped well before the child was born. The story doesn't end there. 2 years later, the mother of the child writes to them and says, "Look, I'm pregnant again. Would you like to have another?" And they were delighted. So they agreed. So now we have a photograph of Ray and Marcia, radiant, with two lovely children. Well, as I say, you can call it chance, you can call it coincidence, you can call it whatever you like. I call it fate or destiny. So that is the reason I consider this, that the destiny of a child is stamped at the moment of conception. But I would still add, it is a concept. Then, why do you prefer this concept as opposed to our lives simply unfolding in a random or chaotic manner, or perhaps materializing from moment to moment out of the infinite field of possibilities? In other words, what he says is, what makes me think that everything is predetermined at the moment? When I read this letter, I was reminded of the story of Nostradamus. Nostradamus became a famous astrologer and seer, and his fame spread out. So the count or whoever it was at that time in his place invited him for dinner with the idea of exposing him. He didn't believe in astrology or that things were predetermined. So he had a number of influential friends, and Nostradamus was also invited. So he hatched a plot. This count hatched a plot with his cook. He told the cook, "I shall ask Nostradamus. I shall tell him that the cook has a white pig and a black pig. I'll ask him which pig is going to come on the table. And you know what to do. If he says black pig, you cook the white pig." It's so simple as that. So hide yourself behind the curtain and wait for me to ask Nostradamus. So he asked Nostradamus in front of everybody. You see? The same thing. He has two pigs. Which pig will come on the table? Nostradamus promptly said, "The white pig." Then the festive drinks were going on, festivities were going on. Everybody was a bit hungry. The food wouldn't come. Then when the king sent word that, "Why isn't the food?" "In a moment, Your Majesty," or your whatever it is. And in a short while, the food did come. And the count very proudly sent for the cook. And he said, "Now, whatever in a pear or whatever, is Pierre, which pig is this?" And shamefacedly, the cook says, "The white pig." Exactly as Nostradamus had predicted. So he shouted at him, "Didn't you know where curry?" He said, "Yes, Your Majesty," or whatever. "I did cook the black pig and kept it ready to be taken out. Then, when my back was turned, two wolves came and snatched it away. So I had to cook the white pig, and that's why there was a delay. You see? So you can call it a pure chance that the two wolves came and took it away, or you could say that was exactly what was supposed to happen, the wolves to come and take away the black pig. And then I remember some time ago, Stephen Hawking, the famous British mathematician, he wrote a 12-page essay on Is Everything Predetermined? A beautiful essay. And the last, it was highly technical, but the meaning was obvious. So I went through the part very quickly, being impatient with myself. All right, what the hell do you have to say in the ultimately? This, that, this formula, that formula. Finally, in the last 3 lines, Stephen Hawking comes to the conclusion. The title of the subject, the essay was, Is Everything Predetermined? So the last 3 lines says, Is everything predetermined? He said, yes. And then he adds the further 2 lines. But this won't help you because you will never know what it is. The latter would seem to be more in keeping with quantum theory. The latter meaning a random or chaotic manner, or perhaps materializing from moment to moment out of the infinite field of possibilities. Actually, that is really what happens. But as far as the human being is concerned, it is random. And therefore, Stephen Hawking says, this won't do you any good because you will never be able to know it. A thought comes, and it has been proved in the laboratory that a thought which we think is our thought happens half a second before we take it as our thought. And the scientist says, out of the thousands of the scientist uses the word probabilities, not possibilities. Out of the thousands of probabilities, at any moment in the pool of consciousness, one probability, the technical word is collapses into a thought or a happening. So, in the pool of consciousness, out of thousands of probabilities, one probability collapses into a thought, which the human being considers his thought, based on which action happens. So that is exactly what happens. One probability collapses into a thought, which leads to some action. And because of this, when Niels Bohr, the physicist, and his group wanted to have their theory of uncertainty, the quantum theory, examined by the most famous of all physicists at the time, Albert Einstein. So they took the theory properly described to Einstein and said, sir, would you very kindly go through this, because all of us have tried and couldn't find any flaw in it. And yet we have a feeling that there could be a flaw in it. Because this is what the quantum theory brought them out. Everything is predetermined. And Einstein is supposed to have gone through that theory several times very critically, and in his words, I am told it's a German expression. He couldn't put a needle through it. He couldn't find a flaw in it. Might have been the German expression at that time. He couldn't, not needle, he couldn't put a pin through it, meaning he couldn't find a flaw. So he said the theory is perfect, but he ended by saying, but I cannot believe that God plays dice with the universe. Everything suddenly happening. But I cannot accept that God plays dice with the universe. Then Niels Bohr explained that according to him, God is not playing dice with the universe, but the human being thinks God plays dice with the universe for the simple reason that the human being does not have all the information which God has. God has the information which probability will collapse into a actuality. God knows it, but we don't. And that's exactly what Stephen King said. It won't do you any good because you will never know it. So whether you say it predetermined or you use the scientific word, it comes to the same thing. This gentleman is Costa. He says he has been testing or investigating many of his actions and has definitely come to the conclusion that no action is anyone's action. It's an event. Then he says, recently a half-brother of mine murdered his mother and his little son and tried to commit suicide. I can easily believe that he was not the doer because nobody would have expected that from him. But it is hard to believe that it was God's will or even that God was the doer. If you say there is a God, is there a devil too? After all, from day to day, here more and more joy is coming up. Here means in his own case, I presume. Because of the understanding that he is not the doer, more and more joy is coming up. But he put up this problem. The answer to that is that everything that happens can be interpreted differently. Some things we do not know. At the moment, he has interpreted it as a very bad thing. And he says, if there is a God, is there a devil too? The answer is, if you consider God as representing the good, then there is certainly a devil representing the bad. Because the basis of manifestation and its functioning, the basis of life as we know it, is the existence at any moment of both the interrelated, interconnected opposites. As Lao Tzu has put it, the moment you consider something as beautiful, you have already decided that something is ugly. Otherwise, you can't call anything beautiful. So you have already decided what is evil when you decide something is good. So the good and the bad are interrelated concepts, both being present at any time in life. And therefore, I keep repeating, when I use the word God, I am not using the word God as an almighty entity just like you and me, connected with manifestation. I am not using the word God as a powerful entity connected with manifestation. I use the word God as the source, from which the source, one without a second, from which the second and the millionth has come about, which is the manifestation, which is an appearance consisting of the totality of millions of objects. So when I use the word God, I am not using God as the chief executive officer of manifestation and its functioning. I am using it as the source. But if you use the word God as representing good, then there certainly has to be a devil competing with him, representing evil. So good and evil, whether you put someone in charge of it as God and devil or not, good and the bad have always existed. And what is more, good at any time is an interpretation. You can quite easily think of more horrible things that could have happened to the dead people, the mother and the child. So compared to that, we even say quite often someone really suffering from a terminal cancer or something. How many times has the word, he would have been better off dead, she would have been better off dead, seeing the suffering. So even in the alternatives, if a person is dead, not knowing what the future could have been, we say that was a bad thing and a very bad thing that has happened. Now, everything has an interpretation. Even what we see, something has an interpretation. And it is this interpretation of the same common principle in every religion. Thy will be done. 4 simple words in the Bible. Thy will be done. I can't imagine any other 4 words simpler than that, needing no interpretation, needing absolutely no interpretation. But those words have been interpreted, and the same 4 words or the same principle exists in every religion. It exists in the Muslim religion. Pavane, would you oblige me, please? La ilaha illahu. Illahu. It means God is all there is. God is all there is. Thy will be done. In the Hindu religion, thou art the doer and thou art the experiencer. Thou art the doer, thou art the experiencer. Same thing in all religions. And yet we have been having religious wars for hundreds of years, right from crusades or even earlier. All because of interpreting the basic principles of the religion, which have been the same in every religion. It is these interpreters and their interpretations which have caused the wars. But the wars have happened. So, according to my principle, if wars have happened, they could not have happened unless it was God's will. If handicapped children are born, they could not have been born unless it was God's will. And the basic point is we cannot know God's will. Or in the words of Niels Bohr, we do not have the full information which God has. But the interpretation causes the problem. There is a story about a king. In India, there are hundreds of stories about kings because there are hundreds of kings at one time. So the king dreamt that all his teeth had fallen out. So he sent for the court astrologer, asked him, what is the meaning of this? Is there a significance to it? And the simpleton of an astrologer puts his hand up, Your Majesty, this is a terrible, this means that all your relatives will die before you. The king was angry, put him into jail. He brought another astrologer who knew what had happened. So this astrologer was also, does it mean anything? Oh, it's wonderful news, Your Majesty. You are going to outlive all your relatives. Interpretation. There's another story I remember. There were two monks in a seminary. They both had to do a minimum amount of meditation, but they were both addicted to smoking. So they found that something had to be done. They couldn't sit for half an hour or without smoking. So they decided to go to their supervisor. I don't know the technical word. They decided to go to their supervisor and ask him. So one man came back the next morning, said, downhearted. The moment I asked him the question, he got so angry, he threw me out. So this man said, really? I asked my supervisor, can I pray when I smoke? And he said, yes, my son, you can pray any time you like. Can I pray when I smoke? The other man says, may I smoke when I'm praying? He was thrown out. So I've always held unnecessary interpretation of the simplest basis of the truth has led to these wars. And it had to be like that. If it happened, if it has happened, it could not have happened unless it is the will of God. If you have a question, please interrupt me and bring it up.
I have a question.
Oh yes, please.
You say there's no interpretation necessary, but this statement is an interpretation. This statement is an interpretation also. For instance, the sentence La ilaha illallah, I was translated by a Sufi phrase, there's no God except God.
I am that I am.
So it's a difference. So it's an interpretation already.
There is no God other than God. That's what you said.
Yes.
And I am that I am. Where's the difference? Do they either need any interpretation? God, I am. It was asked to be interpreted, and you say, I am that I am. Anything more would be a concept.
Yes,
so I am that I am, and God is God, or something, whatever you said just now. It's the same thing, isn't it? Do these two statements, I am that I am, and what you have just said, do they need interpretation?
Yeah, I think there's a difference if I say there's no God except God, or
Yeah.
there's nothing except God, as you said. And so I say it's an interpretation already.
There is no God other than God. That's what you said.
Yeah.
There is no God other than God. I am that I am. Other than I am, there is no truth. I am that I am. Other than God, there is no God. You
Yeah,
see?
that means there's just one God.
There is one.
That
there
was
is
the interpretation I heard.
just the one which is the source. Just the one which is the source. Which as a source doesn't need any explanation, not even a name. That is why Lao Tzu says, the Tao that has a name is not the Tao. The Tao that has a name is not the Tao, it's a concept. You see? But when we talk, we have to use concepts. So we use the word concept. And it is the interpretation which has made the whole structure of law and justice and high courts. I'm told that Abraham Lincoln was such a brilliant lawyer in the States. He took up one case in the morning, fought it and won it. Afternoon, he takes up another case, exactly the opposite of that, and wins it. Interpretation. I'm not saying in life interpretation is not necessary. I am not saying it. In life, concepts are necessary. Without concepts, without thinking, life cannot happen. And for life to happen, the ego, the interpreted, has been created for the simple reason that life should happen. Life can happen only when the interrelated opposites are separated and there is choice of one against the other. So unless that happened, life couldn't happen. And that is why God created the ego. The mechanism in the human mechanism which prevents the human mechanism from seeing its mechanistic nature. The ego is the mechanism in the human mechanism which prevents the human mechanism from seeing its mechanistic nature. So, because of that mechanism, we see arrogant robots all over the place. Arrogant robots. And one of the funniest sights I've ever seen in any field.
And this other sentence, "Thy will be done," it's an interpretation too. And I found an interpretation for me which is very, very good. I always understood it like this: "Thy will be done," but as I don't know Thy will, I don't know what to do.
Indeed.
But now, after I heard your teaching, I say, Thy will is done, not be done, and is done. It's happening anyway. And when I say it be done, it's the acceptance of the will of God happening. And so I'm very glad for this understanding. But it's an interpretation too.
No, you see, Thy will be done means Thy will has been done, Thy will is being done, and Thy will continue to be done. That is truly not an interpretation, that is an understanding. The moment you use a word, it is liable to interpretation, and therefore problem.
Yes.
And therefore again, in the Hindu Advaita, the highest teaching is in silence. But how many have that kind of programming which will enable them to receive the truth of the silence? Not many. Yes. Therefore, word has to be used. The moment the words are used, concepts are made, and the concepts needed interpretation. All that is the will of God.
Thank you.
Most welcome. Yes, he says, since Matthias, this is by Matthias, since several years I'm something my life with questions like who am I, where is the doer? Whenever I really looked, I couldn't find an I, and I can't find any doer. Whenever I try to sense where do I begin, where do I end, I cannot find a beginning or an ending. But still, he underlines the but still. Aber. In German, isn't it? Aber. But still. Yes, but. Especially in relationship, I observe myself believing in I am, and even more in there is a doer. Mostly in she is the doer. I am still used to identify myself as the experiencer of the experiences. The process of deconditioning seems to happen by itself without any efforting. My question is, may I trust this process, or is it necessary for this body-mind organism called me to have or to accept another body-mind as my guru? The answer is the understanding can go down only by itself. The more you try to push it, the more resistance the understanding will find. Therefore, the answer is to question the doership, to question the sense of doership until you really come to the conclusion that there can never be any doer of any actions. But until then, the flip-flops will continue to happen. And among the flip-flops, if there is need of a guru, the guru will happen. But the point is, can I trust that process? My answer is, you have no alternative. Can I trust that process? The answer is, you have no alternative. Therefore, I say, at any moment, if the question arises, what do I do? And the answer is many cases, surprising number of cases, because the average person is a good person. The average person, according to my experience, is a good person and really wants to do what is right. So the basic question for many people is, I want to do what is right, I want to do what God would want me to do. I would like to do what I think God would want me to do. But I cannot know God's will. The answer, therefore, is extraordinarily simple. You don't know what God's will is. But God knows what He wants to be done through you. You don't know God's will, but God knows exactly what He wants to happen through every body, mind, organism at any moment. Therefore, the only logical answer is do whatever you think you should do. And if it happens, that also is not in your control. All you can do is decide what to do. Try to put it into practice. It may or may not happen. If it happens, and what happens is considered by society as good or bad, irrespective of that, if something has happened, if something happens, it cannot be other than what God intended to happen through you at that moment. That's why really it's truly simple. Thy will be done, if it is deeply and truly accepted, is such a simple thing. Is such a simple thing. Life becomes extraordinarily simple. And any prophet can only interpret this, the basic truth. Therefore, Zarathustra, I am told, and then the final talk that he gave to his disciples, Zarathustra said, I have said all I wanted to say. I have told you many ways in which I have said what I have said. Finally, forget it. And beware of Zarathustra. Because deep down, Zarathustra has interpreted the truth as he saw it. Beware of Zarathustra. So, beware of Ramesh. And that is why I keep warning you every now and then. This is my concept. This is my concept. Yes, please.
Could you please say something more about the concept of the thinking mind and the working mind?
The thinking mind and the working mind.
Yes, I'd like to hear more about that.
I see.
Thank you.
Do you have any idea now of what? So if you tell me what is your idea, then we can talk.
I think I have the same idea you have actually, because I heard this before, but
Yes.
I feel it does me very good to hear something
Hear it again.
about it. Yes.
Okay,
That's the
you are
point.
paid for it.
Pardon?
I said you are paid for it. You are entitled to it.
Right, I did.
You see, it's very simple. People use the word mind. And when they use the word mind, and mind, like the ego, is considered the villain of the piece. The mind is the villain of the piece. Therefore, everybody says, be in the no mind state. Be in the vacant mind state. Vacant mind, no mind, is not the mind of an idiot. There is supposed to be a state of no mind or vacant mind. And that vacant mind or no mind, according to my interpretation, means that there is no thinking process going through the mind at that moment. And that process, but yet, you keep on doing things. You keep driving your car. You keep brushing your teeth. You have many things to do, you see, without really thinking. So the working mind, so I came across this concept. You see, earlier, it's a concept. I used to say the operating mind and the functioning mind or something like that, to distinguish between the two. Then, at one point, I remember the specific time it happened. Someone was here, he couldn't quite get this distinction. Then the words came out suddenly. Look at it this way. You have a working mind and a thinking mind. The words just came out, and I explained to him. Working mind is that aspect of the mind which is used to do a particular job in hand, whatever it is. You work as a carpenter, you work as a surgeon, you work as an accountant, whatever you do, when you are concentrating on the job at hand, that is the working mind. And that working mind is only concerned with doing the job at hand. The working mind is not concerned with the success or failure of the job at hand. The working mind is not concerned either with the success or failure of that job, and therefore what that success or failure will mean to me. That is the thinking mind. The thinking mind interrupting the working mind as it works all the time. Are you sure this is going to be Are you sure it's not going to be a waste of time? Are you sure this? You see? So this interruption happens very, very frequently. So that is the thinking mind, the ego, wondering about consequences to itself. The working mind is the functioning mind. Working mind is the functioning mind, which is not concerned with the consequences. That is the broad distinction. Working mind is only concerned with doing a good job. You see? And it is because of this working mind that you have brilliant artists whose work now is sold in millions. And they died in abject poverty. You see, they said, this is what I want to do. And they must have been immensely happy when the job was done according to what they wanted to do. It never sold. You see? So, the thinking mind is thinking of the consequences in future. The working mind is only concerned with the present moment, doing what is necessary, not concerned. Yes. Okay.
I have a question to the animals.
I'm sorry?
I have a question to the animals. It seems that the animals, they have it much easier than the human beings.
And therefore, I think the animals are happier. Honestly, if you look at a cat or a dog in a house, watch him throughout the day, you will rarely see him in a well-kept house, an animal really unhappy, unless it is sick. By and large, the animal is quite happy, for the very reason that it doesn't have a thinking mind. You see, that is quite correct. And let me tell you a joke about this thinking mind and the working mind. In the old days, there used to be a cartoon, Mutt and Jeff. I think Jeff was the shorter one, Mutt was the taller man. Anyway, the taller man is driving a car up the hill. You see, his accelerator his foot is right down on the accelerator. The car is struggling to go up, and his body language asks the car to go up. Finally, they reach the top. And then the driver says, "Oh, Mutt or Jeff or whatever, I'm so glad we reached the top, because if it hadn't, then we would have slipped right down, because the foot brake is not working so well." See? Then the other man says, "Mutt or Jeff, no need to worry, I had the handbrake fully on." The handbrake is the thinking mind, the accelerator is the working mind. Again, my concept.
The question I have, in the sentence, there is a mechanism in the human mechanism
Yes.
that prevents the human mechanism
From seeing
from
its
seeing
mechanistic
its-
nature, yes, is
Yes.
the ego.
is the ego.
It is the ego.
So
Ego with a sense of personal doership.
the animals have no ego.
The animals have the ego, but that ego is restricted to identification with a particular body-mind organism and a name. The ego of the animal is restricted merely to identification with a particular body-mind organism and a name. There is no sense of personal doership. It is the sense of personal doership which is present in the human being and makes him unhappy. It is not present in the animal, and therefore, by and large, the animal is much happier than the human being. Thank you.
Thank you.
I read in your book, Consciousness Speaks, that you had a talk with a monk who was able to get the perception of unity with his environment as a result of meditation. You told him that this kind of feeling is not the way to get loose from the ego or to be free. I can't understand that because I thought it is desirable to get such perception. The point is, you get that perception only at that moment. There is no understanding, basic understanding which lasts you throughout the day or throughout the life. And the perception, there is an old story about a yogi, and a yogi sat in meditation for a long time. Then he came out of it. And in that meditation, there was this oneness with the unity, as he says. But he came back to life. He came back to life as we know it. And then he found he was very hungry. So he asked a disciple to bring some food. But before the disciple could bring some food, he again went into meditation. And after that, when he came out of meditation, God knows how many years, there was not only no food, not even the disciple. So something which comes and goes, what use is it? That was my point. It is only the understanding that there is no one who is the doer or the experiencer that brings about the final understanding. In the meanwhile, all these experiences, those experiences can come about. If you take a drug, you will have an experience. And that's how drug addicts happen, wanting more and more of that experience of oneness with unity. Instead of drugs, you sit in meditation. How long will you sit in meditation? You have to, therefore, the Buddha said, samsara is dukkha. Life means unhappiness, misery. Nirvana is shanti. But he added, they are not two. It's not something you can give up one place and go to the other place. It isn't. They are not two. Meaning, you have to have the shanti of nirvana, the peace of nirvana, while living in the samsara or life of dukkha or unhappiness. Meaning, so long as you are alive and you have to lead your life, you cannot get away from the interconnected opposites of pain and pleasure. But the acceptance of the pain and pleasure as it happens, not as anybody is doing, but as the happening according to the cosmic law or God's will, brings you this peace. And this peace of nirvana is, according to my concept, nothing other than the absence of the load of pride and guilt and hatred and envy. If there is no load of pride and guilt and shame and hatred and jealousy, then whatever happens is accepted. Not as anybody is doing. Therefore, if hurt happens, you don't hate anybody. Whom will you hate? The only thing you can hate is God. And you can't say somebody, all you can do is to swear at him. Why do you have to beat me up all the time? You can grumble at God. But with this understanding that everything, then I say, all right, you don't like the word God. Everything happens according to the cosmic law. Then he can't even swear at God. Everything happens according to the cosmic law. So you accept whatever happens. And you can't even judge whether the cosmic law is good or bad, because you don't have the full information on which the cosmic law is based. So the only thing to do is to accept whatever happens. In the words of Meister Eckhart, the only thing a human being can do is to wonder and marvel at the magnificence and variety of God's creation, both good and evil. Nothing else the human being can do. And the acceptance of this is the shanti of nirvana, peace of nirvana. Is it accurate to say that the mind identifies with the body, thus the feeling of a separate entity arises, and then acquires a portfolio of beliefs? That is, I am the doer of the deeds. Hence, awakening is the disappearance of these beliefs. Basically, yes. But this collection of these beliefs is a conditioning. And the conditioning can only be affected by further conditioning. So what I am talking is conditioning, make no mistake. So this conditioning that you are receiving now may amend or alter the existing conditioning. But that is not the understanding. The final understanding, according to my concept, is only one thing. Events happen, in the words of the Buddha, events happen, deeds are done, but there is no individual doer thereof. There is no individual doer thereof who need to apologize to God for anything that happens through his body, nor is there anyone whom he needs to hate. No one can do anything. In other words, the final understanding, according to me, is Buddha has said, events happen, deeds are done, there is no individual doer thereof. My way of saying it is, the final understanding is the deepest possible acceptance that all actions are divine happenings and not something done by anyone. All actions are divine happenings. Reason we cannot know. All actions are divine happenings and not something done by someone. That is my concept of the final understanding.
I have again a question to the animal. The animal, can it have a final understanding? Because I remember the story of Ramana Maharshi. He loved very much a cow. Do you remember?
Yes.
And so my question is, can an animal have final understanding? Because there is no personal doership in the animal.
Yes. I agree with you. Yes.
Thank you. I would like to tell you my concept.
Please.
And see if you agree.
Please.
Okay. All there is consciousness.
Yes.
And I am.
Yes.
So I am this consciousness. But
Yes.
since I'm a human being,
Yes.
I will never be able to find out about this consciousness, what it is like, something, whatever. So it's
Quite right.
completely effortless to try to find out. Is this correct?
In other words, if you are saying that you as the subject can never know consciousness is absolutely correct. Because other than consciousness, there is nothing. So no one, but what if you try to understand consciousness or be anything, then what happens is, as I said, you usurp the subjectivity of the pure subject, and worse still, convert that pure subjectivity into an object which the pseudo-subject wants to know, which I think could be called the original sin. An object usurping the subjectivity of the pure subject and turning the pure subjectivity into an object which the pseudo-subject wants to know. Because anything known or understood is a subject-object relationship. And there can never be any subject-object relationship where the source is concerned, because it's pure subjectivity. There is no object connected with pure subjectivity. Thank you. Well, this was the last question. Now, this is interesting. In my experience, there are no answers for questions regarding meaning of life or ultimate truth. Then it does not make any service to ask such a kind of questions. Even silence is the answer looks like a meaningless concept. For me, it was a kind of surrender to stop asking. Life is as it is. No longer doubts, nothing to worry. Trust to the source, be in the moment. Please comment. My comment is, why do you want a comment? Everything is in the moment. Fine. But if the comment you want is that I should signify that you are a sage. That's what the comment is needed. Therefore I say, why do you want a comment? Be happy in your understanding, such as it is. Have I to stop emotions and or the wanting to know whether something is right or wrong? The answer is simple. Wanting to know something is right or wrong is an interpretation. What you think is right, someone else will say it's wrong. So right and wrong simply do not exist. If we accept that whatever is at any moment is exactly as it is supposed to be according to the cosmic law or the will of God, there can be never any question of right or wrong. That is the whole point. Acceptance of what is at the moment is all that is necessary. The very fact of right or wrong means the thinking mind and interpretation. Nearly over. How is it that the sage can feel anger but not hate? Is not hate just strong anger sustained over a longer period of time? That is correct. Sustained over a longer period of time in horizontal time by the ego. Whereas anger, the arising of the anger is in the moment. What is it about the understanding that is so liberating? I find the prospect that nothing I do really matters to be depressing. Or am I misunderstanding the understanding? I find that the prospect that nothing I do really matters, that prospect is that concept that whatever you do matters nothing. But matters to whom? there is still that ego, sense of personal doership, who says, whatever I do doesn't matter. But the question is, if it didn't matter to anybody, the question itself wouldn't have arisen. But it does matter. That is why the question. Otherwise, the question wouldn't be there. Why do so many seekers never find? And is the Maya necessary for the Leela to continue? That is, if everyone was enlightened, wouldn't the game we call life just stop? Yes. Therefore, when the Source created the ego for every body, mind, organism, the Source started the process of destroying the sense of personal doership in a limited number of cases. And in those limited number of cases, the Source programmed those particular body, mind, organisms in such a way that this kind of seeking will happen. Ego in every case, the destruction of the sense of doership in a limited number of cases. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, among thousands of people, there is one seeker. And among the seekers, there is hardly one who knows me in principle. Among thousands of people, there is hardly one seeker. And among the seekers, there is hardly one who knows me in principle. So the seekers are still who climb, wanting interpretations, wanting to know what to do. And the one who knows me in principle comes to the conclusion there is no one to do anything. After the special experience, in bracket enlightenment, do desires arise? And is there a need for them to be fulfilled? The arising of the desires, arising of thoughts, arising of feelings is a happening which among thousands of probabilities, one probability collapses, over which no one has a control. Therefore, what thought will come at which moment in the mind of a sage or an ordinary being, no one can know. The brain reacts to it, and the reaction of the brain is a biological, mechanical reaction. So far, exactly the same thing happens in the case of a sage as well as an ordinary man. Once the brain reacts and the reaction comes up, then the ego with a sense of personal doership in the ordinary man attaches itself with that reaction and then continues thinking in horizontal time. In the case of a sage, the arising of whatever arises, desire or anger, is witnessed. And whether that desire is fulfilled or not is also witnessed. In other words, desires do arise in the case of a sage, but when the sense of personal doership is not there, the sage merely witnesses a desire arising and does not pursue it. Sometimes he finds the desires satisfied, sometimes not. Is the fulfillment of a desire not also a part of the ego? It is indeed. It is indeed. That is why the sage is not concerned with the fulfillment of the desire or not. Lord Krishna says, out of thousands, there is hardly one who seeks me. And among those who are seeking, hardly one knows me in principle. My question is, does he say hardly one or only one? Because only one exists. But there are thousands of seekers. He can't say only one. So what he says, Krishna says is, among thousands of people, there is hardly one seeker. Meaning, the number of seekers is very limited in comparison with the total people. So, only a limited number of body-mind organisms are programmed for the spiritual seeking to happen. And among those seekers, there is hardly one who reaches the final conclusion that there is no personal doer. That is what he says. I'm sorry?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah.
Just a little stupid question.
Then you want a little stupid answer.
Yes, absolutely. I'm fine with a stupid answer. Yes, I remain with the experience of being identified with pain and pleasure, and what is the slight difference in accepting the pain or pleasure? They look to me so similar to be identified with what's going on, with happening, and accepting what's going on. And I couldn't really understand the difference.
I see.
And well, I don't know if there is really a question behind this.
I'll tell you what the question. I'll give you an answer which will satisfy you.
Okay, great.
Heiner, be ready, please. You see, I had an appendix operation in 1948, long time ago. The operation was done by a friend of mine who is a surgeon. So, when he started the operation, he told me, don't worry, it's a small thing, we'll finish it in 10 minutes. All I need is to put a little cut on your abdomen. So, I was given a local injection so that I could talk to him. It was not a general putting me to sleep. So, he put a small cut, as he said. See? Then he kept on talking, and curiously, I remember he kept on smoking. No, but he did. Long time ago. 52 years ago. Anyway, and he kept on making this incision larger and larger. So he told me maybe half an inch or an inch. And it was fully, at least it felt like 3 or 4 inches. See? Then he explained to me what it was. He said the appendix was not a clean appendix. It was sticking to the abdominal walls. So he had to scrape off quite a bit. Therefore it took time, and therefore the scar will be longer. That is irrelevant. But what the relevant part is, he told me that the pain will start in half an hour, and the nurse has the instructions to do the necessary thing. So don't worry about it. So at that time, it so happened that until the operation, for the last 3 years, I had not had any leave. And my first reaction when I was told that I had to go to the hospital for 10, in those days, 1948, it was 10 days. Now it is probably 24 hours when you are thrown out. So, first thing that struck me was, I am going to have 10 days holiday. After not having a holiday for 3 years. So, at that time, again, the thought happened. Let me see what this pain is about. Otherwise, I have no time even to think of the pain. let me experience this pain. I'm just telling you what happened. So half an hour later, as the doctor said, the pain started. But I wanted to watch it. What is this pain? So the pain kept climbing up. Half an hour further, again the nurse came. And I found, by watching the pain, witnessing the pain if you like, that the pain was bearable. So I kept on turning the nurse away, and then I found that the pain had leveled off. At a certain point, the pain had leveled off. And I didn't think I needed to take any injection. And while the pain had leveled off, even my attention from the pain disappeared, and I was thinking of other things. You see, so until the nurse came later in the evening and said, I will give you the injection so that you will have your food and you will have better sleep. I said, fine. But my experiment was successful to the extent that I found that at what point the pain leveled off is of course not in my hands. You could say, supposing the pain had not leveled off when it did and had kept on climbing, what would I have done? I don't know. I probably would have taken the injection. But it did happen that it leveled off. So my experiment was, instead of going into a panic, I am in pain, the pain has started, give me the injection. Watching or witnessing the pain brought in the question of bearability. You see? So, to that extent, I would say witnessing the pain must have reduced the pain from the ego's point of view quite a lot. Quite a lot. It was reduced. But you will hear from a friend of mine, Heiner, what happened to him. In witnessing the pain, there was no pain at all. But that is a remarkable case. Heiner is a German. I am a Hindu Brahmin. Yes, Heiner, please.